And we are live with Lincoln Murphy. First of all, I would like to thank you. It's my first international guest, and I watched your presentations before, and I'm really. It's a pleasure to be with you in here. Thanks a lot,
Yeah.
Lincoln.
Awesome. Glad to be here.
Uh, Lincoln Murphy is as we call here in Brazil, the Pope of this customer success here. So I'm going right to the point. Is customer success an area of a company, Lincoln?
Is it an area of a company?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I just saw somebody say on LinkedIn, they said it was like some people say customer success needs to be a company philosophy, right? And they're like, but it can't just be a company philosophy. It also has to be a part of the company. And I'm like, yeah, obviously. So look, I mean, customer success is two things. There's like this overarching philosophy. My definition of that is customer success is when we help our customers achieve their desired outcome. That should just be your operating philosophy as a company. Now, if you want to take that from a philosophy to something that is repeatable, something that's scalable, something that actually you can count on, then you need to turn it into part of your operations, your actual operating model. And that's what customer success management is, right? So there's a difference. There's customer success as the philosophy, customer success as the operation. I will say this. If you don't have it as your operating philosophy, but let's say you have the best, most wonderful customer success management operation, you are not going to be as successful as you could be if you don't have this overarching philosophy. On the flip side, if you have this as your philosophy, you could actually be doing customer success management kind of poorly and still get good results, because everybody is on board with this idea that we're here to make the customer successful. We're here to help the customer achieve their desired outcome. So they're two different things. And I like to separate those: customer success management. Ideally, you have both. That's when everything works like wonderfully.
The philosophy of customer success is like should be, for me at least, the base from every company. Uh, you should help your clients to help them to be successful.
Mhm.
But we don't see that very often. Why did you think that happens, and why do you think customer success has to be a theory? You have to talk about it to people about it. Like it's not even makes sense for me, at least. I don't know.
I mean, I've been fortunate in this, but I mean, I've traveled the world telling people this, and every once in a while I take a step back and I'm like, why is this something we have to talk about? But on at the same time, I get people saying, "Oh man, what you're talking about is just obvious. It's common sense." I'm like, well, I agree, but I wish it was common sense. I wish it was the way that everybody thought, but clearly it's not. Somewhere along the way, we in business lost our way. We lost sight of really what is important. And this is not, let me be really clear. This is not an altruistic, nice thing that we're trying to do for the customer. We lost our way on what is one of the most valuable assets we have in business, and that is the customer. Okay. So this is not about just being nice, just about making the customer happy. This is about making our business more valuable. Okay. So if I can get a customer to achieve their desired outcome, and then that desired outcome evolves because they're becoming more successful. They're achieving their goals. They're achieving their goals in the way that they need to achieve it. And they're growing and they're evolving. And my relationship with them is growing and evolving too. Like, that's amazing, right? They're gonna stay longer, they're gonna buy more, and they're gonna advocate for us. They're gonna go out and spread the good word. That directly impacts the value of your company. So this is not something that's just fluffy and nice to have. Like, this is a real thing. Why we lost track, if we ever had it, I mean, there was we can say the good old days when we were like more customer centric, but I'm not sure we ever had this as the business philosophy that we should have. So we can say we lost track. We can say we were never on the right track to begin with, whatever. But at some point, somebody realized, yeah, you know what? Our customers are leaving. That means they're not staying as long. That means that they're certainly not buying more from us. And they're out there saying negative things like, we need to stop that. Let's turn that around. And all of a sudden, now we have a much more valuable business. So I don't know what happened. I don't know how we ended up where we did, but the companies that get it, the companies that are thriving regardless. So, I mean, like Brazil, you know, the thing I heard there was like, oh, this isn't something that's really ever going to work here because there's just no, you know, customers don't trust vendors and vendors don't trust customers. And it's just this big ball of hate. And I'm like, okay, then look, to break that cycle, somebody's got to do something different, right? The vendors, the companies that have decided to be the one to step up and break that cycle are thriving. They're thriving. They were thriving in Brazil when, you know, coming out of like the really bad recession and all this other stuff, right? A really bad economic situation. And they're going to thrive in future bad situations where other companies are going to go away because they recognize the value of loyal customers and they understand how to get that loyalty. You get that loyalty by making your customer successful. It's just, it just makes sense. So yeah, you know what? This is common sense. The problem is common sense isn't that common.
And what examples of or business cases you use most of your time, most of your talks? If, okay, this company, they are customer centric, they use customer success as their values, and now that's the result, that's the outcome. Like, what are the examples, like in Brazil or even around the world?
Sure. Oh, I mean, at this point, there's tons of examples. I mean, in Brazil, there's lots of companies that have started doing this. You can go back and look at Resultados Digitais as probably one of the first companies in the country. But since they started promoting customer success, lots of other companies have started using this. And you know, we're seeing companies that had massive churn. You know, like really, like, I mean, churn, just in case anybody hasn't heard that term before, is just when a customer stops doing business with you. So if you have a subscription business, it means they cancel their subscription. If you have a license, you know, contract with them, they don't renew their contract or they actively get out of it. If you sell coffee, they come in, they buy a coffee and they never come back, right? So that's what we would consider churn. And it applies, all this stuff applies no matter what your business model is. Don't think I'm not a SaaS company, I'm not a software company, it doesn't apply. No, man, it applies across the board. But, you know, we have companies in, you know, all over Brazil that they basically said, oh, there's just a lot of churn with Brazilian customers. Like, Brazil's a pretty big country.
That's right.
Pretty big country. It's pretty diverse. You know, you work with other businesses, you work with individuals. I mean, you can't just paint with a broad brush and say, there's just a lot of churn in Brazil. And we see this in the US. Oh, there's just a lot of churn in low revenue customers that don't pay us very much. That's where you see it a lot. Well, you bring this philosophy and you start looking at things, you understand this idea of desired outcome. Desired outcome has two pieces. It's the required outcome. It's the goal that the customer has. And then there's the appropriate experience part. The appropriate experience part simply says, not only am I going to help the customer achieve their required outcome, I'm going to help them achieve it in the way that's required for them to feel like this was the right experience. This was an appropriate experience. Well, it turns out a lot of these companies that just said there's just a lot of churn in Brazil, there's just a lot of churn in the Latin American market, there's just a lot of churn, whatever their market is, they weren't looking at the appropriate experience of their customers. And so the customer would come in, you know, especially lower revenue customers, and the customer would have an appropriate experience, an experience that for them would be, well, appropriate. And they wouldn't be getting that because the vendor would say, you're only paying me, you know, this little tiny amount. I'm not going to give you, I can't give you your appropriate experience. It would cost me too much. So what they did is they said, but I can give you this really bad experience, this low end experience to match what you pay me. And then those customers come in, guess what? Inappropriate experience, they churn. Now you just have the cycle of churn, the cycle of distrust, and all this other stuff. And companies have basically looked at it. I'm thinking of like Rock Content out of Belo Horizonte. They basically, looked at their customers and said, gosh, there's some that we probably can't give them their appropriate experience, so we shouldn't be doing business with them. So instead of focusing resources on customers that we can't give an appropriate experience to and giving them an inappropriate experience and causing a lot of churn and building that cycle, just stop doing business with those and focus on the customers that can be successful. Now those guys are just crushing it. So the thing is, there are always going to be some characteristics of a market that some niche or vertical is going to have different characteristics that would indicate that maybe there's more churn. But if you ever find yourself saying, but there's just a lot of churn in whatever market we are in or we serve, take a step back and make sure you're not the reason for that churn. And so one of the biggest things is just taking a look at desired outcome, required outcome plus appropriate experience, figuring out what that is and delivering that to the customer. It's amazing. You start doing that, again, customers stay longer, they buy more, and they go out and spread the good word. So this is a story that is true in Brazil. It's true in the United States. I went to Croatia at the end of last year. I'm going back to Europe. I'm going to Israel. This is a story that is true everywhere I've ever been. And everywhere I've ever been, people go, oh, but things are different here. Yes, obviously there are differences, but these concepts apply across the board. Brazil to me is very special. At the same time, you're not that special when it comes to this stuff. You know what I mean?
Got it. And what's the difference to implement customer success in a small company, early stage company, and a huge company? Like, can you change all the strategy to be a customer success, a customer centric company if you are already huge?
It's a lot harder. It's that idea of like taking a giant ship in the ocean and changing direction. It takes a while. There's a lot of momentum going in one direction. That said, I've worked with some really big companies, Cisco, the technology company, HP Enterprise, Microsoft. What we saw was all these small companies starting to adopt customer success, both as a philosophy and operationally. And these big companies out there going, who cares? We're fine. We have the momentum, right? And then those big companies start noticing their momentum slowing down, not in big ways, but little things. They start seeing market share going to these little companies who maybe don't even have as good of a product. It's not as robust. It's not as complicated. But it turns out maybe they don't even have what we call feature parity with the big guys. They don't have all the features and functionality, but what they do have is a knowledge of the appropriate experience for the customer. And they were giving the customer that appropriate experience. And these big companies were starting to lose market share to those guys. And then they said, that's not good. So sometimes they bought those little companies. But what they also started doing was saying, we need to start implementing this. And so you started seeing top down from the CEO, C-level, this is how we're going to operate now. We're going to be a customer-centric company. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you follow my philosophy, it means that you're here to help your customer achieve their desired outcome. And one of the companies I just did some work with, Infobip, which is based in Croatia, a global company, like literally, very just distributed all over the globe. How do you maintain like moving in the same direction? Well, one of the things you can do is make sure that everybody's clear on what the desired outcome of the customers would be, and just make sure we're all aligned to that, and then sort of sanity check every decision around that. Is this going to make the customer successful? Is this going to allow them to achieve their desired outcome faster, more cost effectively, whatever that is that's appropriate for them? That company is thriving. And one of the key reasons is because they've adopted this operating philosophy. The CEO basically said, this is what we're doing. And then they said, okay, cool. Thank you for telling us what we're doing. Now, how do we do it? then they said, well, this is how we are going to operationalize this. This is how we're going to make this work. So big companies can do this, but it requires top down. It requires a commitment at all levels to say, we're going to implement this. We're going to figure out how to implement it. And then we're going to actually take action on it and do it. The same thing is with smaller companies. The difference is you don't have the legacy usually. So if we said smaller companies, but also like early stage startups, that are starting from scratch, they don't have the legacy, the baggage that can kind of keep them from doing this. My biggest wish is that I could work with more early stage companies, because what usually happens is they say, we don't need to worry about customer success right now. And 2 or 3 years down the road, they're like, oh man, our churn's really high. We don't, our customers won't help us spread the word. Our customers are renewing, but they're not growing their relationship with us, which is not a good sign. A customer that's successful should be growing, should be evolving their relationship with you. So those companies that are new, brand new, actually have a lot of potential to do some amazing stuff. Smaller companies that are older, that aren't just early stage startups, they're just small companies. They might even be harder to because they don't have, they only have a few people. They don't have maybe external pressures like from investors or boards. In theory, those would be easy to work with. I've actually found I've had some issues with smaller established companies because they're just so stuck in their way and they have no external pressures. So early stage startups, they have the pressure of their investors. They have sort of a blank slate. That's awesome. We can do some cool stuff there. Bigger companies have a lot of external pressures to do this. They have, everything from, again, like losing market share to just having to meet their numbers. It's those small established companies that I find to be the most challenging. But you have to approach every situation differently. But I've done this with big companies. I've done this with small companies. I've done this with early stage startups. So it's possible. Obviously, clearly possible. It's just you have to first take this approach of, we want to do this and we know why we want to do this and we know what this is going to do for us if we do it, because it's not something that happens, it's not something that just magically overnight, you see results. You have to put, sometimes you can, but this is a long game. You're not just, this isn't a gimmick or a tactic that's going to have massive results overnight.
It seems to me that all companies, they are born with a purpose, and after they gain some track, they start to grow, they lose that purpose.
Yeah,
that's what seems to me the problem with growing company. Do you think is that part of the companies start to missing out the customer success because they start to help people, and after a time they start, okay, we have to earn money, so fuck it.
Yeah, no, that is spot on. That's perfect. That's exactly what happens. The thing that what I want people to think about is applying these principles is not going to, it's not going to hurt what those goals are of making money. This is, if let me put it this way. If you apply customer success principles and you end up making less money, you're doing it wrong. I mean, I call my customer success philosophy is all about customer success driven growth. I've said it already a million times, but I'll say it a million more times. We do this to get our customers to stay longer, right? So if we do that, if nothing else, we just get our customers to stay longer, or can, if they bought a cup of coffee to come back tomorrow and buy another cup of coffee, then we are increasing the lifetime value of the customer, right? So right there, that metric plays directly into the value of our company. It goes into, you might multiply your revenue by, some multiplier, as investors call it. That multiplier is made up of various inputs. One of those is customer lifetime value. If customer lifetime value is going up, then our company is going to be more valuable, right? So if we can just get our customers to stay longer, if they stay an extra month, if they stay an extra year, that adds to the overall lifetime value of the customer. Now, we can actually spend more to acquire that customer because they're worth more. We can outspend. It's not about spending less to acquire a customer. It's about really the efficiency of that spend. If I can outspend my competitor and bring in a customer that's going to stay longer, now now I'm winning in the market, and I'm also, affecting these other metrics. Anyway, so like that's awesome if we can just get our customers to stay longer. If you're thinking, I just want to make money, and you're thinking customer success is something that's going to keep me from doing that, again, you're looking at it wrong. Because if I get my customers to stay longer, all these other valuable metrics go up. But then I also think, I don't do what?
Is happiness one of these metrics?
No, not at all. No. Let me finish my thought there, and we'll talk about happiness. But look, if we can get our customers to stay longer, that's great. If we can get our customer to buy more while they stay longer, so they stay an extra year, and while they're there, they double their spend. You see, so any thoughts around this is not a way to make money? Just stop your thinking. That's wrong. Go back, read my stuff at 16ventures.com, or just whatever you got to do, but stop looking at customer success as something that's going to keep you from making money. Now, how you could use customer success and not make money. Here's how you do that. Try to solve for customer happiness. If you solve for customer happiness only, you will lose money. Customer happiness is a vanity metric. It's something that maybe you feel good about. I'm not a psychopath. I want people to be happy. That's always my joke. It's the truth, but I mean, I want people that I'm around to be emotionally happy. I'm just a realist in understanding that emotional happiness and the customer's success are two different things. I'll give you just a really quick example of this in my own world. I violated my own rule. I had a consulting client. This was over last summer. We had a 3-month engagement. It started off the engagement, just fine. And then I had the opportunity to go to their city. And all of a sudden, while I was going to be there was this opportunity to speak at their customer event, which I love to do. I love it. When I get to introduce customer success to the customers of my customer. I had the opportunity to do a workshop for their employees. These are things that I would normally charge extra for, but I like these guys. Not only did I, they're my client and I care about them from that standpoint, I actually liked the people that I was working with. And specifically this one guy, we went out to dinner, we got drinks, we had fun. I really, I liked him. So I said, hey, I'll do these extra things for you. Everything seemed cool. He was happy, right? That's awesome. You're over delivering. And then right around the end, we're getting close to the end of the engagement. I missed a self-imposed deadline. I told him I would have something for him on this date, but I had just come back from speaking at their event. I missed that deadline because I thought I just did all this extra stuff for him. Obviously he's gonna be cool with that. Woke up in the morning, checked my email. I had a really angry email from him. This is the 3rd time you've missed a self-imposed deadline. I don't understand what's going on. You're unprofessional. We need this end deliverable that we talked about before. And I was like, okay. I hadn't planned on that because I thought I had been delivering value this whole time. So I scrambled to pull together this report because here's the thing. His appropriate experience was a rigid schedule of deliverables, a report at the end that he could take, distribute to everybody to at the very least sort of validate the expense of the consulting engagement. And then they could take that PDF and put it in a fucking folder and call it good. But I thought, I did all this other stuff for him. It's great. It ended up, no, it wasn't great. His appropriate experience was this. I was way up here doing all this other stuff. And at the end of it, I gave him the report that he wanted, but we didn't end amicably. I didn't end with a client that I could use as a reference. So what I want you to think about is like, how are you doing that in your business? You know, how are you not over delivering? See, here's the thing. I didn't over deliver with him. I misdelivered. I delivered the wrong thing. Over delivering would be like, this is exactly what he wants, and I'm doing just more of that, like excessively. But I wasn't even doing what they needed to feel like this was a successful engagement. And that's what that appropriate experience part is. So I haven't really said, I've never told that story out loud before because, or, you know, to anybody, but it's something that I just keep in my mind because I'm like, it's so, to me, it's so visceral to think about it because it was very confusing. You know, I thought I'm making them happy. You know, here I am out there preaching. Don't try to make your customer happy. Figure out what their appropriate experience is and just deliver that. And then I'm doing the very same thing that I'm telling other people not to do. And so I have this very real, very, you know, recent example that I get to, in my mind, always go back to. But that's the thing. Just figure out what their appropriate experience is and just deliver that. Now, you're going to have different customers, different types of customers, different sizes, different characteristics, different regions that your customers come from. They're all going to have a different appropriate experience. You need to group your customers based on those appropriate experiences and then deliver what is their appropriate experience. And there might be a customer over here, customer type, a group of customers that their appropriate experience you cannot deliver in an economically feasible way. They don't pay you enough, right? That's a customer. Like I said earlier, you know, the tendency is to give them less, but that's a customer you should just not be doing business with. Don't give them less because what'll happen is they'll churn. And then you'll be like, but gosh, there's just a lot of churn in that customer segment. That's not true. You're not giving them their appropriate experience. You just shouldn't be doing business with them at all. On the flip side, you have those big customers that you might think they deserve a lot because they pay us a lot. But if you understood what their actual appropriate experience was, you would give them just that. And you might take a customer that would otherwise be, the margins on it would not be as great because you're over delivering, or you could be just so misdelivering that they churn. But if you're over delivering because you don't understand what they actually need to be successful, then you're taking what should be a high margin customer and making it lower margins. And I get pushback on that from people in customer success. Who cares? If you don't care about margins, you don't understand what you're doing, you don't understand business, you're probably in this just to make your customers happy. So the point is, customer happiness is a vanity metric that we will chase and chase and chase until we go out of business. It has no bearing on the customer's actual success. And if we try to solve for their happiness, we very likely could not solve for their success, and they will happily churn. Happy customers leave. If that wasn't the case, then we wouldn't have this argument, but they do. So anyway, to answer your question with a 15-minute response.
A nice example. Thanks for it. I wasn't expecting about it. One thing like that. Do you know any study, any data that proves what you're saying? The only customer success example that I have ever seen, of course, I don't study so much about it anymore. I'm sales right now, but the only example I saw was in 4 Hours Work Week by Tim Ferriss. The example he uses the Pareto principle to fire 80% of his clients and stay with the 20% that give him money and didn't give him so much trouble, so much problem. So have you any study about it? Do you have any data that can prove it?
No. I just have my experience. I don't know if there's I haven't seen any empirical evidence on that. I can just tell you if you go look at your own data. So this is what I tell people to do, because two things. One, I'm skeptical of a lot of studies. If you look at like a lot of the, especially in the SaaS world, you have a lot of these benchmark reports where they they just group all the SaaS companies together like they're all the same. No, SaaS companies come in all shapes and sizes, everything from, what looks like it's multi-year enterprise contracts to month-to-month billing. When they combine a free trial with a company that has freemium and they call it the same, like right there, I know that their study has no credibility. So there's some of those studies are just bullshit to me. So I'd say whatever. I don't care. And also the other thing is, if you look at the way that benchmark reports are usually put together, they get rid of the outliers, right? They get rid of they don't want those really poor companies or really successful companies to skew their results. Well, I'll tell you what, I only want to benchmark against the companies that are being like pushed out of the report because they're too good. Like fuck average. I want to know what the best companies are doing, but they're not included in those reports. So I don't really care about that stuff. I say, let's look at your situation. Let's go through, I have this success potential checklist that I go through. Basically, we want to know, what does a good fit customer look like? What does a bad fit customer look like? So we say, here's all the different things that make up success potential. And if I can't check all the boxes, everything from functional fit, or everything from technical and functional fit to like literally experience fit and cultural fit, if I can't give them the appropriate experience, if I can't give them their appropriate experience, then I can't do business with them. Like they're a bad fit customer. So figure out what your success potential checklist is, and then go back and look at any customers that churned. How many of your customers that churned didn't match your success potential checklist, or conversely, were a bad fit customer? If 80% of your customers that churned were bad fit, meaning they did not have success potential in the first place, you didn't fail to make them successful. They never could have been successful in the first place. Like you shouldn't have signed them. Your marketing targeting was wrong. Your salespeople were closing bad fit customers. They probably didn't even know it, right? Because you never communicated to them. Like like you said, you're in sales. You look at a customer, you go, okay, I've qualified them. Everything looks good. They want to buy. Nobody's ever told me what a bad fit customer looks like. So I'm gonna close these guys because we both mutually agree that this is a good thing. But if nobody's ever told me what a bad fit customer looks like, I very well could be closing a bad fit customer. So what happens is you close. You would never do this, of course.
Of course. And any characteristic and could be any characteristic like revenue, like the profile of the company, could be anything, right? Yeah,
absolutely. We just have to be honest about this, right? And we have to be honest internally, and then we have to communicate it throughout the company. So marketing is not actively going after, or even worse, paying to acquire bad fit prospects that the salespeople have to work, right? The salespeople work the prospects that come in from marketing, unless they're going out and generating their own leads, which even if they're going out and generating their own leads, but they've never been told what a bad fit customer looks like, or your SDR team or whoever is out there going out and finding prospects has never been told, don't bring in prospects that match this criteria, they are probably bringing in bad fit customers. So go back and look at any customers that churned over the last few months, whatever that looks like. It depends on the situation. We might go back a year. We might only go back a couple months. And you can quantify right there how many of those customers churned out if that were bad fit. If there's a lot that were bad fit, this is a problem. Now we can actually go in and quantify even more. How much time was spent supporting these guys, onboarding, continuing support, professional services to try to get them up and running, when the reality is they were never going to be successful. So all of that time spent in onboarding, in sales, in onboarding, in support, in professional services, and whatever else we did was wasted. Yeah, we got some revenue from them, but that was time not spent with good fit customers.
But Lincoln,
that's the problem.
How the fuck can you come to your manager and say, hey man, we have to sell less?
Okay.
The first thing you want to do is slap your face. The first thing.
Oh, absolutely. If somebody told you, or somebody told me, sell less, I'd punch them in the throat. Because that's stupid. I've never said sell less. If you go back and listen to this, anybody who's watching, I've never said sell less. What did I say? Sell to good fit customers. I want you to sell as much as you fucking can. I want you, I tell salespeople all the time. I do sales kickoff meetings. Look, I want you to go in the US. The place you always go is to the beach in Mexico. I want you to go to Cabo in Mexico as part of the President's Club. I want you to go there with your new Rolex or whatever the fuck. I want you to reach your goals and go beyond. I just want you to do it with good fit customers. And if the only way you can hit your goal is by selling bad fit customers, fuck you. Get the fuck out of here.
Nice.
Nobody that I know, I've never met one person. And people like in customer success and sales, there's always like this us versus them bullshit, right? Look, I have never talked to a salesperson who said, I would love to close bad fit customers. Never. I know that it may come as a shock to anybody in customer success, but I've never met a salesperson that said, I would love to close bad fit customers. What they say is, I close the customers that I'm given to, or the prospects that I'm given to work, or I go find prospects based on what I'm told would be good prospects. If somebody said to me, here's other characteristics or that to look for, I would do that as part of the qualification process. But nobody's ever communicated that to me. So now you're going to get mad at me for closing a bad fit customer when I didn't even know that they were a bad fit customer?
So who's the role? Whose is that role? Who
comes up with bad fit?
No, who should be the one who is saying, okay, since now we're going to only close good fit customers. Who is the job? Who is this job?
Well, ideally,
course,
I mean, this is going to be an executive level decision. We're going to so it depends on who's sort of pushing this initiative. I mean, clearly, if a CEO or executive or board has come to me and said, hey, we want to talk about customer success driven growth and we have some ideas here, they probably have some idea that some of this stuff is going on, right? They have a lot of churn. They probably have an idea that we're probably working with what they might not term it this way, but essentially they know that they're working with bad fit customers. They know something is off, right? So we can go back and start to quantify that by looking at the data. If you don't have that executive buy-in and you are on the customer success, like unfortunately this happens, right? A company says we're customer centric now. We're going to create a customer success organization. They get a couple of junior people that they give no direction, no budget, no leadership. They report to the CEO, but they don't. They're just fucking sitting back there trying to make the customer happy. Those people will understand this stuff and they'll try to get this. They'll try to go to sales and marketing and say, "Hey, don't close bad fit customers." And sales and marketing will say, "Get the fuck out of here! I don't even know who you are." But again, not because because they don't have the executive buy-in. They're just another like peer department, probably going at it in a way that sounds like close less customers, do less business, leave money on the table. I'm going to take money out of your pocket. Like this is what they're hearing, right? So if you have executive buy-in, you quantify it, you come up with the data, you get the executive team on board, they push it down to sales. Wonderful. Then it becomes a thing. And we're all in this together. This isn't an us versus versus them thing. If you're in a situation where you're the customer success person and you need to get sales to stop closing bad fit customers because it's, you can't make them successful, what you need to do is not lead with a negative like that. Don't go to sales and marketing. And remember, it's sales and marketing. If marketing is creating the funnel, filling the funnel with leads, then you need to go to both. Don't go to them and say, hey, I have a list of characteristics that are bad fit customers. Stop closing customers like that. It's just not going to work. What you do, because in customer success, even if you're just there to make them happy, you're still hearing from your customers. You still know more about your customers than probably anybody else in the company. So what are some successful use cases? How do your customers talk about what they do? How do your customers talk about what your product does and how they use it? Take all of that learning, go to sales, go to marketing and say, here's some stuff we've learned. Here's the best, most successful use cases. Here's the language our customers are using. Here's how they're talking about us and all that. If you can help marketing hone in, like fix their messaging basically, and hit their numbers, they're going to trust you. If you help sales better resonate, if you help one salesperson better resonate with a prospect and that salesperson closes that customer, you now have a friend in sales. You now have somebody that trusts you, right? So every time you learn something useful or valuable from the customers that you think marketing and sales should know about, that's positive, communicate that. Now do that for a little while. You're helping them hit their numbers. Sort of as a side effect, you're probably bringing in more good fit customers. Then you can go back to them and say, hey, here's my latest report on some of the cool stuff that's happening. By the way, we've had some real problems with customers that are like this. They're just not really able to be successful with our product, no matter what we do. So, just look for those and maybe try to not close those customers. If you start with that, they're not going to hear you. If you help them do help them do their job better, and then you come in with, by the way, it's just about psychology and actually, fuck that. It's just about how you work with other humans, right? Understand that, if I can help you do your job, you're going to trust me, and then I can maybe get you to do something that's going to help me. I'll help you first, and then maybe you can help me. And even though sales not closing bad fit customers isn't just helping customer success, it's helping everybody. It's helping the company. It's helping the customer, right? Because if you close a bad fit customer, you're setting everybody up down the line for failure, including the customer. And then, if you're in sales and you are in sales for the long haul, like this is your career, this is what you want to do. You probably want to have customers that you can turn to later on that could be references for you. Some of the best salespeople I know, they use customers as references from other companies. That's how they had such a great experience with a customer from another company. They can use that customer as a reference who just says, yeah, I bought from him at XYZ company. You're at ABC company. Or he's at ABC company now, but he was so good back then. If I needed that product that he's selling now, I would buy it from him. That's what you want. And if you are in sales just for a minute, just to make as much money as you can, and then you're going to go do something else, if you're closing bad fit customers, it's still going to catch up to you. It's going to make your job harder. And that's the other thing I try to get salespeople to understand. If when you have bad fit customers and they churn out, they don't go quietly. They'll go out and they'll spread the negative word, right? And then when you're trying to sell, you have to overcome those bad reviews, that the blog post that just tore you apart, the peer-to-peer chatter that's out there talking shit about you. You have to overcome that. And if you work for a company that doesn't know what success potential is for their customers, doesn't have a bad fit definition, that means you and every other salesperson are probably closing a lot of bad fit customers, which means your sales cycle is longer than it has to be. Your deal size is probably smaller than it should be because you're having to overcome these objections, and the customer is going to say, well, okay, I don't quite trust you as much as I'd like to, so I'm going to start smaller. All these things start to add up. Again, this isn't altruistic. This isn't about being nice and just making customers happy. This is a bottom line thing. And for a salesperson, this is how much money am I going to put in my pocket? Customer success really does impact everything, from the company valuation to what you get in your commissions. So I don't remember. What was your question?
And what do you think is the right profile, if that exists, for a customer success manager? What is manager like? The person, the
I'll tell you what.
But
I started going to Brazil 2015. Wow, 4 years. I've been to Brazil 14 times since then, or 13 times since the first visit. When I first started going there, I thought I'm going to bring all of this, experience from the US to Brazil. And you know, what I ended up doing actually was learning a lot more from Brazil and taking it to the rest of the world. One of the things that we had to overcome, like in the US, in a lot of different US cities, but like, you know, take Silicon Valley. If you look for CSMs in Silicon Valley, there's a million of them. They're, you know, there's just everywhere. I mean, you have no problem finding people with customer success experience. The problem with that is, who cares? Just because you have customer success experience, just because you're a customer success manager over here, does that mean you're going to be good here? Well, in a lot of cases, people aren't very sophisticated in the way that they hire. So they say, you had experience here, okay, you'll work here. And then if you're successful or not, who cares? If you are, great, you'll stay. If you're not, we'll just find another CSM, right? There's a lot of turnover. Go to Brazil 4 years ago. The one company's doing customer success management basically, and try to find a CSM with experience. Not going to happen. Today, you can find a million CSMs, although half of them don't have any fucking experience, but they updated their LinkedIn profile. But so this still applies, but basically we had to say, all right, well, this poses an interesting situation for us to solve for. What kind of people do we actually need? And it just got me thinking. I got spoiled. I fell into that trap of just being able to go find a CSM whenever you needed it. Fire alarm's back on. So basically, look, you need to figure out what's the role that you're solving for. Who would be the best person? And so we go back to appropriate experience. We have different customers with different characteristics. Those different customers should be grouped together based on their appropriate experience. And then based on that appropriate experience, we can figure out what kind of coverage we need. Some customers are going to need more of a consultative approach. So we need maybe people with professional consulting experience. You know, they worked for some of the big consulting firms. Some customers don't need anything other than technical support and some real, you know, mostly just technology-based communicate, like, you know, email and Slack or whatever. Who would actually be good for coverage on those? Well, we could have a pool of people that are more, they're not necessarily people, right? They like to sit behind a computer and just chat. Maybe you work in a particular vertical. Worked with companies over the years that fit this, but one in Brazil, Apaprova, in the higher education market. Actually, they had some people with higher ed experience, you know, like actual experience in higher education, because that was something that their customers needed to have, and you can't teach experience in the industry, right? You can teach somebody who has industry experience how to be a customer success manager, but you can't teach them 13 years in higher education experience, right? So you need to understand what is appropriate for your customers and then apply the appropriate coverage of humans and technology to that. That, by the way, is how you scale effectively. If you just take the outdated, even in customer success terms, I mean, go back 5 years and we were talking about what amounts to account management, where you take basically your entire customer portfolio and you just split it up across customer success managers and their book of business. That just, if you think about that, that just doesn't work. And that's where you see customers 2 or 3 years down the road, or I'm sorry, you see companies 2 or 3 years down the road going, we're having scalability issues with our customer success management organization because we can't just keep throwing people at it. Right? At some point, it's just not going to work, especially, well, it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't work. So you need to be smart about this. And the way that I've devised to do this is to look at the appropriate experience, know what kind of coverage that requires people and technology, the ratio therein, and the characteristics of people, and go find the right people for that. And that actually, by the way, is how you get around this wave of people just updating their past titles on LinkedIn to all include customer success. It's amazing to find somebody with 20 years of customer success management experience in Brazil, but they're out there. So to know what what you actually need, that will help you kind of figure out a way to get around all of this bullshit of just, I have all this customer success experience. You'll know what the actual characteristics of the people that you need to hire should be. Does that make sense?
Yes. And talking about customer success career plan, do you see something like a customer success manager should have that kind of career plan? And I'm not talking about support. I'm talking about the person who really do customer success, that goes there and helps the company to be successful, whatever the definition it is. And talking about it, too, do you think a customer success manager should earn a fee, should earn a sales? Like,
yeah. So let's talk about that, because that's a, like, I don't think so. Here's on the. So I'll tell you this. I was working with a company that did the that paid commission to their customer success managers. They basically paid like 80% of on target earnings as their base, and then they had 20% essentially OTE, on target earnings, paid in some sort of variable comp plan. So just commission. I said, don't do that. Just pay your people their on target earnings. And the reason I say that, well, so first of all, I said that to them and with the CSMs in the room, and they all freaked out because. But here's the thing: I said, no, listen. I'm not saying only pay you 80%. Don't pay commission anymore and only pay you 80%. I'm saying raise your salary to 100%. Fuck the commissions, because these are people that are just going to do their job anyway. Their job is to make the customer successful. What does that mean? Well, if you buy into my philosophy of customer success, then you would know that success, in order to achieve it, a customer has to stay past a renewal, and they will probably have to expand their relationship with you. If they're successful, they're growing, they're evolving. Their relationship with you should grow and evolve too. Expansion and renewal are not something extra. This is not sales. It shouldn't be sales. It doesn't have to be sales. We should not hide from this commercial relationship that we have with our customers. We should orchestrate everything ahead of time so that we say, hey, when you hit the success milestone, we'll talk about adding this add-on to your account, but you don't need it right now. But when we get there, we'll talk about it. Or when we get there, we'll add it to your account. Is that fair? Yeah. Okay, cool. You don't need it right now. And then when you hit that success milestone, we say, hey, you just had your first sale, or you just had your 7th sale, or you just completed this project. Now it's time to invite a couple other people, or now it's time to increase the capacity or whatever. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's the sales conversation you have with a customer if you're doing things right. That's not a sales conversation. It's just a conversation about continuing to make them successful. So going back to the question, do we need to have commissions? No. So when I said that to this company and people freaked out, I said, I'm not saying, you're not going to make everything that you would make if you got all your commissions. I'm saying pay your people the 100% market rate, and then don't worry about it. I've seen so many companies waste time and effort and energy trying to come up with variable compensation strategies. They don't need it. So once we got past that, listen to this. A couple of the people that were really pushing back on me, that were kind of freaking out, said, listen, all we want is to be told that we're doing a good job, and commissions is how we know we're doing a good job. And I said, then you have a leadership failure. If your leaders only are telling you that you're doing a good job by you getting a commission, then fuck your leaders. They're not leaders. They're not doing a good job. Leaders lead. Leaders tell their people that they're doing a good job. And when we got past all that, so they were like, you're taking away the thing that tells me that I'm doing a good job. They didn't care about the money. What they cared about was knowing whether or not they're doing a good job. So most of the time, like people, especially those who don't identify as sales, right? These are people who have chosen to go into customer success because they want to make customers successful. You don't need to incentivize them to just do their job. Now, we do need to have these conversations about this commercial versus non-commercial. This is all commercial, man. There's who's under the impression that a relationship between a vendor and a customer is not commercial? That's stupid. So we just need to get that out of the way and then understand that as part of the journey towards success, as part of the journey toward their ever evolving desired outcome, they got to stay past a renewal, and they probably will need to expand their relationship with us. Not extra. Now, I'll bonus people. I mean, I'll give bonuses. I'll do stuff like that. I'm going to show recognition for sure, and I will throw in monetary bonuses. But in terms of, you know, really complex variable comp structure that you might have for new business sales, you don't need that for your existing customer success folks. New business sales, what you do when you go out and you find a prospect out of thin air and you turn them into a customer, that is a whole different mindset, skill set, everything. That requires variable compensation. You have to push, you have to have that incentive. The people that self-identify, that go into sales, that's what they want, because then they can go make as much money. It's basically up to them how much money they can make, right? That's what you want. We don't need that, and we don't want that with our customer success managers. That said, this isn't about selling less. This isn't about getting your customers to buy less. We do this right, and it's not that complicated. I mean, I've had companies that I work with easily 2x customer value, 4, 10x. I had one company. I don't talk about this publicly because it sounds ridiculous, but it's true. It's 100% true. One company, for a subset of their accounts, this was not across the board, but for some of their accounts, used this philosophy and used their customer success team, which included customer success managers, account managers, and account development reps. So they really had this land and expand thing that was highly operationalized. 40x growth, 40 growth in account value. So, and what I mean, let's put some numbers to that. $25,000 US was basically, if they were based on project size. They started with a customer, same calendar year, $25,000, over $1 million at the end of the year, 40x. How? They just knew what success looked like, and they knew how to, they knew what the next logical step was whenever a project was completed to do that land and expand. They were not salespeople. They were not sales conversations. They were just conversations. Anyway, my point is, this is not about limiting growth in any way. This is about, like, let's figure out how to 5x growth in an account. I just did a workshop in Los Angeles. Guy flew in from Australia to attend. This was one of my customer growth intensives. We just worked really hard, for a day. He figured out on that day how to 5x account growth, and he's putting it in place, and it's starting to work. I mean, 5x, 5 times, 500% growth, right? And like within a year. Is that possible across the board? No. I mean, it has to be a logical reason for customers to expand, but there are a lot of opportunities to do that. And that's what I'm talking about. I want exponential growth. So if you ever catch yourself thinking that I'm saying sell less, do less, make less, you are hearing me wrong.
Lincoln, Julia said here, nice talk. I'm sending this video to my manager ASAP. Besides closing good fit clients, do you think employee satisfaction play an important part in the customer success of a company?
Employee satisfaction? Absolutely. Yeah. I often say you can't have customer success without employee success, because this isn't about just doing everything that makes the customer successful and like not taking into consideration the people that are supposed to be doing that. So I said earlier, like, one of the things that I see a lot of still is a company creating a customer success organization, finding usually some junior people that don't have any experience, telling them to go basically make their customers happy. And see what happens is then I come along and say it's not about happiness, and then they get mad at me. But I'm sorry, it's just the truth. But the problem is they don't have any power to truly or resources or anything to truly make the customer successful. So the only thing they have is to make the customer happy. But at the end of the day, when their numbers are to improve churn and they're not hitting those numbers because making customers happy isn't enough, well, their satisfaction goes way down, right? So you have, like I said, also with those people that were getting a commission and all they wanted was to actually be told that they were doing a good job. It wasn't about the money. They needed the money to make what their market rate. They needed that commission, but it wasn't about the money. They were going to make their customers successful regardless. But how long they could continue to do that when the only reward they're getting is monetary was probably they weren't going to stay there very long. So employee success is absolutely critical. You have to have that. So whether that's, and then this, by the way, you have to know what kind of employees you need. And you need to be clear about this. If you're a very early stage startup and you may not have a very solid career path in place, you may not have any structure at all. And you're bringing in somebody that comes from a very structured corporate world, they're probably not going to be successful. You need to be honest about your culture and your organizational setup and the kind of and the people that you're bringing in. Somebody coming in from the corporate, very structured corporate world might be fine in that role if they truly, they want something new. They're trying to expand their horizons, but you got to be honest about that stuff. There's a lot that goes into that question. We could talk about it for hours, but absolutely, employee success is critical.
Nice. To finish here, Lincoln, I have one question about purpose that I use every end of podcast, and I don't know if it will make sense in English, but I will try it. Okay. You have to present yourself without saying your name, where do you live, your college degree, where you work, and what's your age. So you have to have a presentation. You have to introduce yourself without telling your name, your age, where do you live, what's your college degree, and what's your work. Does it make sense in English for you?
So you want me to introduce myself and all those different characteristics without actually saying those things, or just without saying my name?
No, without saying any of these characteristics.
Any of those things.
Any, yes.
All right. Oh man, that's challenging. Oh man. I have no idea how to answer that.
You wanna I show you an example?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a person that I believe in generate value to people. So all the things I do in my life is thinking about it. Is that at Wirecard in sales there is with compartilhando insights. That what we're doing right now. I'm learning with great professionals, and I'm sharing this knowledge, not something just to me. It wouldn't make sense. It's just one thing that I would keep it. Doesn't make sense for me. And I have other projects called Side Sampa, is a travel agency that all I do is based on customer success. That is, I have to provide them the best experience that the place should provide. So I didn't say my name. I didn't say.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Okay. For the last 10 years, I've spent every waking moment thinking about customer success and making customers successful and what their desired outcome is. And this is not something you can go to school for. I certainly did not. It's I don't know. That's interesting. I'll have to think about this. This is a really cool exercise. I'll tell you honestly, one of my biggest challenges in general is just talking about myself. I love talking about customer success. I love talking about helping other people. But like the weirdest thing for me is like putting myself, like front and center and talk, even though, a lot of people think, I think a lot of people think that I probably have a really big ego. Cause I'm always out there, putting myself out there. But the reality is I actually just really care about getting this message out. And I found that the best way to do that is to be out there talking about it. I don't really have a big ego, so it's hard to. So I don't put myself out there leading. I lead with the content. I lead with the message. So that exercise is something I should work on, because I've also found that if you don't put yourself over, nobody else will. So you have to like. Be your at least at the very least tell people who you are. I do videos on LinkedIn. I'll just say, hey, this is Lincoln. And I'm like, oh, right. I should probably say like more, but the weirdest thing for me is like, hey, I'm Lincoln Murphy. I'm world-renowned growth architect, fucking speaker, author. Like it's just weird. So that's why that exercise is difficult for me. Cause I never even think about myself. Like who am I? All those questions is not something that's top of mind. So anyway, interesting. Very cool, man. This was fun. And that was a very interesting question to end with.
And thanks. I apologize for my English. I haven't practiced in a while, so I know it's really bad right now, but I promise I will get better.
If we had to do this in Portuguese, it would have been much, much worse. So no, you did great. That's why I never understood people like, sorry for my English. I'm like, it was great. We had a great conversation. So that was awesome. I didn't even notice. I mean, so no worries.
Okay, thanks, Lincoln. Thanks
Absolutely,
a lot, man.
Yeah.